Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murder. We are on part 123 of Life Beyond the Grave, the Lori Vallow case. The crazy case coming out of Rexburg, Idaho. Also involved is Chad Daybell. If you're not familiar with the story, make sure that you jump back and check out the very beginning of this series. Also, if you enjoy the work that I do, make sure that you like, subscribe, and don't forget to comment. Now, guys, since I've had COVID, I am still struggling with my voice, so just try to bear with me on that. I know you guys have been waiting for this because I'm running behind. If you don't know, my husband's been working in Israel, and so we were having to deal with a few things that were kind of devastating that's happening over there right now. Perhaps I might be able to share something from the inside if I can find that extra time. For now, we're going to go ahead and begin with this podcast. We left off where Charles Vallow had planned to go pick up JJ, his son, who has autism, from his wife, Lori Vallow, in Arizona. They had made plans to actually have JJ picked up, Charles take him to school. It should be just another normal day. But what happened was Lori found out that Charles, her brother, and several other people were planning an intervention. They wanted to help Lori because they felt like she was struggling mentally. When Charles showed up to the house, things didn't go well, not at all. Somehow, Lori Vallow gets a hold of Charles' phone. Lori claims there's an argument. And in that argument with her brother, Tylee, Alex Cox, there's gunfire. And Charles Vallow is deceased. For those of you that follow this story know that this was not an accident. This wasn't in self-defense as Alex Cox and Lori Vallow would claim. This was plain out cold blood murder. Before we move forward, I want to refer to an interview that Melanie Boudreau did, or Melanie Pulaski, where she describes that how she found out about Charles' death. First, Melanie Boudreau actually claims that Brandon Boudreau's doing the same exact things to her Charles Vallow did to Lori.
And, Lori wasn't telling everybody in our family, hey, Charles has been cheating on me. She was keeping it to herself, dealing with it, trying to keep it between just her and Charles. And Charles just went ballistic, and he started emailing everybody in the family. And then he took JJ away, and he's like, Lori, you're never going to see JJ again. You're crazy. And it's these patterns of narcissism where, everything's fine until you start asking questions. I mean, I didn't see the same exact pattern happen with my ex-husband. Everything was fine. He thought the world of me until I asked questions he was uncomfortable answering. And instead of saying, hey, these things, here's an explanation for this, he turned on me and he said, Melanie, I'm going to take the kids away from you. You're crazy. I'm going to get you excommunicated from the church, and you're never going to see your kids again. And that's just from asking, hey, what's this video I found, right? What are these text messages? And so many things. And I don't know, it was like watching Charles unravel first, then Brandon did the same exact thing, and then it's just these patterns, and I'm like, you just can't make this stuff up. It's the same exact thing happening over and over again. And Lori just moved on, and she didn't play any of Charles's games, and he eventually he's back and forth. Hey, I want to be back together with you, Lori, and then he'd say, your end's coming soon. Just tons of threats. And so the day he came to the house, Summer said, hey, Alex, will you go over? And, Charles has been kind of aggressive and, acting crazy. He's going to go over there to get JJ. Will you just go over there just in case something happens? And as we see, something did happen. And I know they're trying to change that whole investigation now to make it look like Lori had something planned or Alex did, but there's no doubt in my mind about that shooting. Brandon went and ran with that story to his advantage. He pulled me into the garage, and he and my Uncle Adam said, Charles has been murdered by Alex. And just finding this out, I'm like, it doesn't feel right, but I'm like, there's got to be something more to this.
Believe that Charles was shot in self-defense, that Alex was defending himself.
Absolutely, and I think Tylee was the biggest. I don't know. I went to her and was just like, "How are you?" And she was so brave about speaking about it, and I was like, "Wow!" Like, and Tylee's very collected, very mature. I admire Tylee so much for how brave she was, and she explained everything. As so did Lori, and so did Alex, and it made sense with how Charles had been acting. And you're in shock that it just went to that extreme, but I'm glad Alex was there to protect Tylee, because that's the only, Lori and Charles were arguing, but the only time Alex said, "Hey, I'm going to get involved in this," is when, he had a baseball bat and was, I don't know, with Tylee, I don't know if he was going to hit her. Tylee made it sound like he was probably going to hit her and kind of taking the bat away. And I hated that Tylee had to go through that. And, I know there's been a lot of criticism of how Lori acted afterwards, and how she's smiling on camera. And I know Lori, and when she's uncomfortable, she kind of, or in shock, she'll just kind of laugh or smile, try to make light of it. And I do the same thing. That's just something how we handle being in shock, and every person handles being in shock differently. But that's when everything was kind of started to be strange. Charles had said all these things in court documents, things that I had never heard Lori say, and that's when he started. That's when it kind of all these strange ideas started flowing around, and our family, and I know Lori's always been an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She loves learning, and she spent a lot of time in the temple trying to learn and grow from experiences and try to feel peace from all the things that have happened in her life. And
so Melanie gives you confirmation that Lori Vallow uses all these bad things, supposed bad things that happened in her life, where people were attacking her to her advantage to bring in attention. This gives you an idea that this might be one of the motives, is Lori does this for the attention that she's seeking. Now that we know the story so well, and since trial of 2023 for Lori Vallow, we know that Melanie Boudreau is a complete liar. And here she is, pretty soon, her kids are going to become zombies. They're going to be the next target. And they're looking forward to the money that Melanie Boudreau is going to bring into this group. Melanie Boudreau tries her best to make Charles look like the person that is guilty and who is violating every good law as a good human, and how innocent and beautiful Lori Vallow is. Melanie Boudreau will claim that she didn't know anything about all these strange beliefs, and in the same breath say how they got together as a family and talked about all these godly ideas.
Charles, I feel like, took that to an extreme with the things that he said about her. Honestly, I see everything that Charles did, and it looks as if he was setting up. As soon as Lori caught on to what he had done, like the emails about his life insurance. Charles sold life insurance and had his own company. I mean, the texts between people, it almost looked like a setup. It was very alarming to see all these things. I've been asked, what spiritual experiences has Lori had? And that's not for me to answer or to say what Lori and Chad's beliefs are. But I know the people they are, and I know they're good people, and they're trying, and they're somebody that people as a family would get together and talk about, the mysteries of God and these deep doctrine conversations. And hey, what do you think about this? What about this idea? Or hey, this is in a book. What do you think about this? We're allowed to do that. We're allowed to discern truth from error and just learn. And in our church, we believe in revelation, where we can, it's an ongoing process, and we're learning, and continually everything's changing. And we're just people that are trying to grow in our faith and be closer to the Savior. And there's no cult. Lori's my aunt. Zulema's almost like an aunt to me. Alex is an uncle, and this is my family, and we're, you know, just trying to learn about these things. But the whole fear, I guess, where it comes down to Tylee and JJ and this zombie idea came from a disturbing phone call I got from one of Lori's old friends right after they took off to Hawaii. And
we'll stop there because they're jumping too far ahead. But, you know, they're saying that they're looking at all these things that they're finding outside of the doctrines. And she also understands the fact that they are seeking revelation, and they're allowed to do that because that's how the LDS faith works. To me, that's very, very dangerous. Melanie is an open book, but she's an open book of lies. And obviously, there's several friends of Lori's a few months from now that's going to try to warn her before it's too late. So her husband, Brandon, pulls her to the side to tell her, look, you know, Charles is dead. This is not a good thing. Something's very, very wrong. And Melanie Boudreaux, of course, is going to be on her Aunt Lori's side and say, you know what? You guys are making stuff up. Lori Vallow and her little posse are actually doing some strange things on the same day that Charles is, well, he passes away. Texts on the day that he passes away give clues that they believe that Hyplos, this dark spirit in Charles' body, will be gone today. So it says blank to Lori, most likely Zulema. As I was working on Hyplos today in the temple, I was told he would be taken as he is. I don't know what that means. Then I was shown to only put light, the brightest light, from the top and the bottom, at the same time meeting in the middle. So I've been doing that all day. Something I've often wondered is how is it that the people in the temple do not realize that their members are using it for this improper reasons and using it to hurt people, to use these gifts that they claim that they have, to contact higher deities, spirits, all of this is just insane. They're even doing these ordinances there, which really kind of shocks me. The name of this series should have been Life in the Temple, Lori's Temple, the journey to build a temple. So we can look forward to seeing quite a bit of evidence I think we haven't seen yet, according to the Chandler investigators, when the Charles Vallow trial begins. So I'm looking forward to that. But during this time, they are not so sure. In fact, Lori Vallow will tell everybody that they deemed it self-defense. But the most damaging evidence against them is the fact that they lied about what happened and how Charles was shot. The fact that the delay in calling 911, this would validate their desire for him to pass away. This is something Adam Herbert shared way ahead of time. Now, something I was interested in is when Alex Cox was being interviewed, I noticed that he had his hands clenched around this water bottle. You got to remember that Alex Cox was a comedian. And what does that water bottle stand for when he's up there telling jokes? Oftentimes, this water bottle is used to give them a moment to think, an excuse to stop. And I noticed that Alex Cox was very intimidated, very nervous during that interview. So I was wondering, how did he feel knowing that he tried to talk Lori out of doing what they did to Charles? For months, they've been talking about this, and now it's happened. Many people who have watched Alex Cox's interview with police believe that Alex Cox's demeanor for such a devastating event was way too calm. For me, what was confusing is the fact that if you look at family pictures and how people talk about Alex, he seemed very affectionate. He seemed to care about the kids and a family. He was a lot of fun to Colby. He was weird. One of the first ones you can call on to help you, but also can be very deceiving. So while he's sitting in that police room, they actually take DNA swabs from his cheek. So something we don't hear about is, do they test him for gunpowder? We know that Alex Cox said that he washed his hands afterwards. But what about Lori Vallow? Did anybody ever test her for gunpowder? Why is it a lot of people believe that Lori Vallow might not have had the galls to do this? After all, Alex Cox was well aware that Lori liked to use people as to fall for her. I mean, that's simple. Why not Alex Cox? Share your thoughts below. Who do you think was responsible for Charles' demise? So things that stuck out for me was the fact that Lori made it seem as if Tylee and Charles got into several physical altercations, while for Alex Cox, he was not aware of any physical altercations of any kind between Charles, the children, or Lori. So the only thing I can figure is, we know with Lori Vallow, you got to flip what she says. So obviously, it might be Lori who was being violent to the children and to Charles. Lori has never told the truth. As far as I've looked into her, she never tells the truth. Even stranger, Alex Cox will admit that he and Lori both were expecting Charles to show up. Everyone knows that Charles was arriving to that house that morning to pick up JJ. Now the cops, like I said, they take pictures of his injuries, they swab him, take whatever else they need to take, and they give him a break before sitting him down again to ask him more questions, so to kind of see if his story is the same.
Okay, facing again. Alright, and then
you know what's sad when you're holding the photographs and you don't have a good side?
put your hands like this. Just keep that so you're tilted down more.
Okay.
So you're like this. Tilt.
Oh, hands
okay.
tilted.
Yeah.
Good. Alright. Turns out we can move the camera around.
Okay, and then palms up. Okay, so I'm going to swab your hands right now, just so that I'm not going to do any.
And then, yeah, as soon as she's all done here, I'll get you into next we'll take pictures of each of your injuries. We'll check your back out, and I'll let you go use the restroom, and I'll get you a new water. Or do you want soda or anything? No, water would be good after, but okay, not before. What's that?
So you can see Alex Cox trying to joke his way out of this situation, something that he does all his life. But something I noticed, I don't know if you noticed, but the interrogator is struggling to figure out if Alex did this out of spite or out of defense. And to be honest with you, if you didn't know the situation, even these psychological tactics, Alex seems to be making it kind of difficult. So the only thing he has left to go with is finding holes in the story.
This area.
Okay. And he's in the living room.
Yes.
And he still has the bat.
Yes.
Is he now focused at you, or is
Yes.
he focused at Lori, or is
Is
it?
it me?
Okay.
Yelling at me, and he moves towards me.
What was he saying to you? Do you remember?
Here, the investigator is attempting to catch something that doesn't fit, like the fact that Alex Cox says that he didn't remember anything that was being said during this altercation. In most cases, they're trying to make him feel uncomfortable by making him sit so far away and alone. This won't work so much with a truck driver. That's my thoughts. Someone felt like this feels more at ease being alone.
Do you remember?
Not really.
Okay.
I just remember yelling.
Okay.
And then I was watching more body language. And when someone aggressively comes at you.
Okay. Are you, do you have your CCW?
Yeah.
Okay, so
So Alex Cox says that he doesn't have time to remember what's being said because it's so chaotic, but yet he can have time to read the body language. So very confused by that. Maybe I'm just being too picky.
So he's basically coming at you and he's yelling, you're watching his body language.
Yeah.
And you said you told him, I didn't, when we're talking, I'm trying to not take notes and listen to what you're saying.
I'm trying to calm the situation.
Okay.
I'm gonna drop your bat, and he's fuck you and whatever.
Okay.
Have me in.
Did you ever tell him to leave, or did you say drop your bat, or?
First, I just said drop your bat.
Okay. And then did you say anything else after that?
I didn't have time.
Okay. So he came after you with the bat.
Yep.
He's kind of holding it in his hand.
In his right hand.
Okay. You fire a couple times.
Yep.
And then you go to the kitchen.
Correct.
And then back to the bedroom.
Yes.
Okay. When you went back to the bedroom, you washed your hands.
I'm
Or, you washed your hands in the kitchen.
Yep.
You put your gun back in your room.
Yep.
Where'd you set it at?
It's on the floor.
Okay, so you set it on the floor. Get your phone.
Yep.
Call 911.
Yep.
And then when did you realize Lori had gone? Did you call her?
No.
Okay. So you call 911. Did you have to do CPR on him?
I did.
Okay.
I tried.
Okay. But you weren't on. I must have mistaken you. I thought you said you were on the phone when.
No.
Did you hear them arguing about his phone?
No. All I heard was her say, "Don't touch me," and then him
Okay.
coming right after her.
Okay. You said that a couple months ago, Tylee was at your house, and he came over. What happened? Tell me a little bit more about that.
He was going insane trying to locate Lori because Lori wasn't talking to him.
Okay.
They had split up. So he was bugging everybody in the family, blowing up their emails, phone, just sending text messages, just anything he could do to try and get somebody to tell Lori to contact him. So he was just spazzing out. So Tylee and I were pulling up to my house, and he followed us, and then he sped up and blocked my driveway. And he got out and ran up to me real aggressively, like he was going to do something. And he just stopped and talked. And then Tylee got out and yelled at him. And then that lasted, 15 minutes in the front.
Okay.
A lot of screaming Tylee at Charles, and Charles trying to leave and her not letting him because she wanted to get everything out that was bothering her.
Okay. So he didn't go after Tylee at that time.
Physically, he did not do anything.
Have you spent a lot of time around Charles?
Yeah.
Is he hot-headed?
Not normally.
Okay. So have you ever, besides the argument between him and Tylee, have you ever seen him like you saw him today?
No.
Okay.
No.
How would you describe him today?
Very aggressive.
Okay.
Physically aggressive. Going after Tylee, going after Lori, going after me.
Okay.
I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen him behave like that. I was shocked.
Okay. How long have they been together?
15 years, maybe?
Okay.
Oh, a good while.
And
I wanted to share that with you guys to let you know that, how Alex portrays Charles before all this happens compared to after, and that Charles Vallow suddenly, his demeanor changed and suddenly become violent. That should have been a red flag for investigators and interrogators at that point. But it didn't seem to be, at least during this time, because these two will walk the streets. And I believe if anybody could have really changed stuff, even above the family, it would have been the police. Cheryl Wheeler, Charles Vallow's ex-wife, is sitting in her Austin, Texas home when her 24-year-old son comes walking into the room. He had just received a text from Lori, Charles' wife, saying that his dad was deceased. The family's in shock. Cheryl can't believe this. She says that they tried to actually call Lori back, text her, but she just wouldn't answer them. But Lori is looking at her phone. She's got Charles' phone going through it because guess what? When police get through interrogating these two, they give Lori Charles' phone. Why in the world would they do that? I can't figure out. It's one of the most important pieces of evidence with this case. But anywho, Lori is in contact with several people, her family members, her children, her niece, everyone. But she's not too happy to get back to Charles' kids to give them an explanation of what happened. Probably, I think the strangest thing in all of this is Chad Daybell had the balls to call the funeral home and look into cremation and sending Charles' remains back to his family in Louisiana. Also, interestingly, I wonder if Christina called the police like she had threatened, knowing that she had Lori and Alex were talking about poisoning Charles just weeks before now. Christina said that she texted Lori when she heard that Charles had died.
So when I was traveling back from Canada, I got a text that Charles had been killed. What's interesting is the way that I read the text, I thought Charles's brother had killed him. So it was a couple days before I even started out who had killed him. That he had been killed by Alex. I didn't figure out for a bit.
Okay.
Excuse me.
You're fine.
I was traveling, so I didn't get home for a couple weeks. So I think that the last exchange that I had with Lori was I reached out. My husband had told me, because my husband wasn't with me traveling, he told me that I don't know if Lori had been at church or if her niece Melanie had been at church, but that they had moved back into our ward and were living in that Mesquite Groves, wherever he was killed.
Where Charles was dying.
Yeah, which was in our ward. So she'd been living out of our ward since she'd come back. And so I reached out and said, hey, I heard about Charles passing. I'm so sorry. When is there a service? Is there anything I can do to help? And she responded that Charles had never wanted any sort of, even very explicit in saying he never wanted a funeral, but just they were just doing, I don't know if it was a memorial or a burial or something, but there wasn't going to be any service. And I probably tried a couple more times to reach out to her. My friend Nicole, I think she was in the temple and saw Lori and visited with her about what had happened. And her story was that...
My apologies, guys. If you hear something twice, it's very difficult to put this in order. So let's continue.
Charles had been there to pick up JJ for school, and that this is all secondhand, of course. This isn't Nicole telling me what she said. But she had said that he left his phone, and when she picked up his phone, she could see a conversation between her brother, Charles, and it seems like there was somebody else, but I can't think of who it was, and that they were planning to kill Lori. That there was a plot that he had taken out a policy in her name, and they were going to split a couple $1 million.
What did you think about that? When you heard that?
Well, I was waiting for there to be some police report about it. Like, okay, so he was trying to kill her. And he was planning to, and her own brother was in on it. And so I expected that there would be some sort of a police statement or something would come up. She told Nicole that she was getting no money that Charles had. Changed his will, so everything went to his sister, and so that now she was left holding all the finances for their business, which she in the past had talked about, like Charles was a financial planner and how he.
In one breath, Lori Vallow tells people that they are very wealthy and that Charles is doing very well for himself. In another breath, she's telling everybody that they're broke. And we all know why Charles is broke. It's because Lori has burned through over $32,000 in just a few months. And now, Charles Vallow, being deceased, has left her in a very damsel in distress situation where she's having to take care of all these finances, this debt that Charles left her. Again, victimizing herself in every situation there is. Poor old Charles? Absolutely not. It's poor Lori. So these are things that Lori will tell Nicole several weeks later. And we will learn, I'm going to probably put that here, that Joe, the landlord, is not happy with the situation. The neighbors are not happy with the situation. And he will tell Lori that he will, he doesn't want to have, this house any longer, that it has a lot of bad vibes. That's where his friend was killed, and that she would have to move. Meanwhile, Summer Shiftlet is completely grateful that Charles is the one that's gone. And it's not her sister, Lori. She says she didn't want that to happen, but better him than her. Justice didn't seem to be on her mind, just as long as Lori was okay. Facts didn't seem to matter. She seemed to believe that her sister was incapable of doing anything to hurt anyone, while she has no idea that Lori's even setting her own brother up as a murderer, someone attempting to murder her for her insurance money. Why? Because Adam Cox wanted to help Lori, wanted to help Charles. He knew that his sister, she had gone over the cliff. Now, there's a lot more that we could share on the statements and stuff that happened after Charles dies, but we're just not going to have time to go over all that. On Dateline with Keith Morrison, Tylee's demeanor is described as being somehow apologetic but overly composed. Chandler detective Nathan Moffat would say that Tylee was very well spoken. And what's weird is later on, they're saying that they believe that Tylee might have been coached in what to say, but during this time, they didn't show any interest in that idea whatsoever. According to Chandler police, they said not one person would ever come forward saying that Charles had problems with rage or abusive behavior, not even his ex-wife. Also on Dateline, April Raymond says, I never saw Charles exhibit abusive behavior or rage, but I had far less exposure to Charles than the others referenced in this story. We did some digging and we found that there was some, we went over that early on in this series, that Charles, during his divorce with Cheryl, had some domestic violence accusations toward him, but we're not certain, if that is true or not. Also, Annie Cushion seems to say that perhaps there was a little menacing behavior towards her brother, Joe Ryan. So imagine, guys, that you live in this neighborhood and you see your neighbor's house being wrapped in yellow tape and them all over the news for someone being shot. We've heard some conflicting statements on Charles and his characteristics, who he is. But since he's been with Lori Vallow, Charles Vallow has had no signs of any kind of aggression, any types of violent behavior or rage. In fact, many of the family members who said that Charles was driving them crazy in order to get a hold of Lori was just begging to do anything he could to get her back. So that's not violence, it's not threats, it's giving up something, sacrificing his safety and his happy life in the future just to have someone that poisonous in his life. All right, guys, I'm going to cut it down here. I've got to go. Want to thank you guys for all of the ones that have been subscribing, liking, sharing, doing everything they can to be so supportive to this channel. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.